Hello and welcome to my Flower Cardian deck profile. It's been since the middle of 2018 since I actually did a deck profile for this one, so I'm actually very happy to do this as the first deck profile for 2021. Now I'm going to say one thing about this deck. The goal of the deck is trying to draw as much cards as possible from your deck with your effects from the extra deck and the main deck to essentially get to your win condition and essentially rotate as much cards around until you get to a certain point, which you will see what I mean when we'll get to the deck. But this deck is very fun, mostly with decent hands. Most hand traps don't really stop you, which is really cool, except from the Bureau and Draw and Lockbird. So do keep that in mind when you're playing with this deck. It's mostly a fun casual deck, but it still can have some nice chuckles with your friends, and it's very affordable, so that's another very nice thing going on for it. But before we jump right into the video itself, I want to say a few things. First and foremost, thank you all for an amazing 2020. We have grown in double the number of subscribers, if not more, since our last year, which is absolutely amazing. And also, yeah, it's my actual Jewish birthday today, so yeah, I'm actually very happy to share an actual milestone with you, as well as have a very fun video. And I'm going to remind you the usual subscriber thing if you want to see more videos like this. And without further ado, and once again thank you to you all, we're going to jump right into the Flower Cardian deck profile that I made for you. Alright, so as for the deck itself, in terms of price, the deck is so accessible because the core itself, all of the cards for Flower Cardians are really cheap, so you should not worry about that. But I am going to take a second talking about the strategy for the deck itself, because the deck itself, as we'll move along, you will see that it locked itself to specifically only Flower Cardians, and it's really working only with its own archetype. And kind of like the extra deck, while it is really good, you don't really have like a lot of defense mechanism against, putting multiple negates. So you do need to have some certain of a win condition, which we do have it in the main deck. So if you already know what I'm talking about, cool. If you don't, also cool, you're going to see what I'm talking about as we'll get to it. So just to let you know in advance that because you lock yourself to Flower Cardian specifically, you do need some kind of a win condition, which we'll get to it once we'll get to the spells. But now let's move on into the 12 main important Flower Cardians monsters, which is 3 Pine, 3 Cherry Blossom, 3 Zebragrass, and 3 Willow. These are the 12 most important Flower Cardian monsters. As for Pine, it's essentially just saying, like, giving you the basic archetype effect, pretty much, which is you draw a card on normal summon, for him specifically, on normal summon only. You draw a card. If it is a Flower Cardian, you keep it. If not, you send it to the graveyard. That's pretty much what he does specifically, and kind of like emphasizes most of what the cards in the archetype do, at least in terms of the monsters, which is you want to draw your Flower Cardians. If you don't draw your Flower Cardians, you send these cards to the graveyard, and essentially you don't really get the advantage. But you still get those special summons, which we'll get to them. As for Pine, you want to normal summon it. This is like the one that you, if you able to, you always want to reserve the normal summon too, because it's the best one to normal summon, and it's the one that you also want to try to keep on the field because of the new card, Cherry Blossom. And Cherry Blossom, allowing you to special summon himself if you control a level 2 or lower Flower Cardian, which is the only one that you have is Pine, and that's why you want that, because this one is a free special summon, not a hard one per turn, as long as you control a level 2 or lower, which is only Pine. For these guys as well, this one is 7 or lower Flower Cardian if you control, because it's level 8, and this one is level 10 or lower because it's level 11. All of them lock you to Flower Cardian specifically once you use these effects, but they all also have their own individual effects. As for Cherry Blossom, as a soft once per turn, you get to tribute any Flower Cardian, then draw a card. If it is a Flower Cardian, you keep it and then either add to your hand another Flower Cardian or special summon it, or if it's not a Flower Cardian, send it to the graveyard. As for Zebragrass, is it more nice because these are, in my opinion, the two better ones. Zebragrass, on summon, is essentially a magical mallet, or should I say a mulligan. You essentially get to shuffle any number of Flower Cardian monsters back into the deck and draw the same number of cards, which is really strong because you're able to essentially, for example, shuffle like 4 Flower Cardian monsters and maybe draw with it, like the next draw 2 Flower Cardian monsters and draw instead 2 spells, so you will get your spells, which are very powerful most of the time, and also not draw into, and also like keep your deck more filled with Flower Cardians to just hit them better. So I like Zebragrass quite a bit, and it's also really important for one of the other spells. As for Willow, Willow is my favorite, and it is the most important card in the strategy. Like, it's like this one by himself carry the entire archetype on its back. Like, not a joke. Because this one, as a soft once per turn, allowing you to shuffle any Flower Cardian monster back into the deck, including an extra deck monster, so you're able to shuffle that, and then draw a card. It doesn't have to be a Flower Cardian, and you get to keep it, which is absolutely amazing. This card by itself, you want to continue rotating him over and over and over and over if you're able to. Like, getting this and one of the extra deck monsters is just the main thing you want to try to do with the strategy. So, yeah, that's pretty much does it for the main basic 12. And like I said, Willow is the most important. Pine is, like, just important for normal summon. And the rest are still very, very nice. But as for the rest 9 of the Flower Cardians, I'm running 3 copies of Cherry Blossom with Curtain, 3 Peony with Battlefly, 1 Willow with Calligrapher, 1 Clover with Boar, and then 1 copy of Meeple with Deer. So as for Cherry Blossom with Curtain, by himself, he's also a very, very nice, kind of like, I guess, a Colute for Flower Cardians, by discarding himself and just boost the monster by 1,000 attack, and I believe also defense. Point is, it's a nice effect, but you mostly don't use that. However, its other effect is that it's allowing you to make him a starter, but it's also not really the best, because he does do the same thing as the other guys, like, draw a Flower Cardian, and if it's a Flower Cardian, you get to keep it, if not, you send it to the graveyard, but he doesn't, he cannot be normal summoned. He only allowing you to essentially use an effect in the hand to draw a card. If it's a Flower Cardian, you get to special summon this card from your hand. If not, you send both this and the cards that you're drawn into the graveyard. So this one is a pretty nice, how should I say, like, reward if you're able to draw a Flower Cardian, but if not, it's a very, very big, I should say, risk, or, like, a big payoff. So this one is a very, very important one, especially also with his little version, which is Cherry Blossom. Both of these are really, really good, the level 3s, but they also have, like, a very, very hefty effect if you're not able to get into the Flower Cardian, so do keep that in mind. As for these specifically tribute over some of your Flower Cardians to pretty much gain effects. Like, specifically, you tribute some of your Flower Cardians, except that this one needs specific one, but the point is, you tribute your Flower Cardians, and essentially, you special summon them, and then they also have an effect. As for Cherry Blossom, or should I say Peony with Butterfly, I don't know why I'm always confusing those two. Peony with a Butterfly, you get to pretty much tribute any Flower Cardians that you want, special summon it, and then draw a card. If it's a Flower Cardian, you get to keep it, and then arrange the top 3 cards in your opponent's deck to either put them in any way you want in the top or the bottom of their deck, which is not really relevant, but sometimes does come up depending if you're not able to just deal with your opponent turn 1. It is an option, I guess. Then and it's also your main tuner. And you're probably asking yourself, how can you synchro with these different kind of levels? Well, your 4 tuners right here, including the tuner in the extra deck, essentially making all of your Flower Cardians level 2 for the synchro summon. So you can just essentially just make them all level 2, and that will be quite fine. As well, for Calligrapher himself, he just on summon, he just draw a card. If it's a Flower Cardian, you get to keep it. But he can only specifically be tributed over Willow, which is not really the biggest problem, because Willow is the main card in your deck, but you do need to keep that in mind that you cannot summon it specifically to anything but Willow. But you still need another tuner, because sometimes you don't draw these, or draw into Zebragrass, or draw into the cards that allow you to get into this card, so you do need a 4th tuner in the main deck, and Willow with Calligrapher is the only one, but it's still really nice to run as a one-off, because it does have some nice effects, so, it's also kind of nice to sometimes get rid of one of your Willows, to then special summon another Willow, to shuffle the first Willow. It does have some nice effects as well because of that, so I really, really like this card as a one-off. As for these two, these are 2 of your removal. Going first, you don't really need to run more than 1 of these each, but when you're going second, you probably want to run 2 of them, which we do run 1 of each additional copies in the side. But the point is that these guys can, all of them essentially, can, these 3 essentially, like 1, 2, 3, allowing you to do the draw a card. But even if your opponent doesn't control a monster or a spell and trap, you're still able to essentially draw a card into the Flower Cardian and keep it, if not send it to the graveyard. The effect of, like, destroying a monster or destroying a spell or trap is only if if you do that, you are able to do it. Like, you know, it says specifically, and if you do. So if you're drawn a Flower Cardian, and you show it's a Flower Cardian, and you get to destroy a monster or spell trap. It doesn't really matter. The point is, it's free special summons. I know I'm getting a little bit confused over these, but Flower Cardians is a very, very complex deck, just to let you know. But that's pretty much does it for the monsters. You don't really want to run anything else but Flower Cardians or anything that get you to the strategy. Now we'll move on into the spells. So for the spells themselves, we're running 3 copies of Flower Stacking, 3 copies of Reincarnation, double copies of Flower Gathering, and then the one that probably people are going to raise an eyebrow, which is Super All-In, but I am going to explain Super All-In a second. As for the cards themselves, Flower Stacking is probably the most important one beside this. It's allowing you to stack 3 cards from the top of your deck in different kind of like Flower Cardians, any of them that you want to. Stack them, 3 of them, in any order that you wish. So for example, you can stack a Pine, stack a Cherry Blossom, and then stack a Cherry Blossom with Curtain on the top of your deck in any way that you want, which is really cool. Also, another effect which I think is a little bit stupid, that it's only the turn after it was sent to the graveyard. You get to banish this card from the graveyard to then recover a Flower Cardian from your graveyard back to your hand. I really think it should have been an effect that you can use immediately, but it is what it is, and it is nice sometimes, but you're mostly not going to use it because you are going to try to kill your opponent turn 1. As for Reincarnation, this is an additional 3 copies of each of your Flower Cardians, either by activating its own effect or just being generally just a great card. Because Reincarnation states as such: you get to target a Flower Cardian monster in your graveyard, add it to your hand. And if you do, you get to special summon 1 Flower Cardian, or should I say, then you get to special summon 1 Flower Cardian monster from your hand, ignoring its summoning condition. Great card. Most of the time, you're essentially just like add a Willow from your graveyard to your hand, special summon the Willow, and then use the Willow effect to shuffle something back, and then draw another card, which is really good. However, it also have another very, very awesome effect, which is, if it is get activated by the effect of, or should I say sent by the effect of Flower Cardian monster to the graveyard, you get to pretty much look at the top 5 cards of your deck, add 1 spell or trap from those to your hand, and then stack the top 4 cards, the rest of the 4 cards, or 5 cards if you didn't get a spell, in any order that you wish, which is really, really good, because it's essentially like an additional 3 copies of any spell in your deck in the top 5 cards, which is really good. So I love this card quite a bit. It's a monster reborn of Sword, which is also a nice, like, it's a very broken spell. I really, really like this one. As for Flower Gathering, you only run 2 because you can only activate it once per turn, and it does lock you specifically for Flower Cardians. However, you are able to summon 4 Flower Guardians with 100 attack and 100 defense with different name from your deck, which is essentially Pine, Cherry Blossom, Willow, and Zebragrass. You summon them all in attack position, and you launch yourself to Flower Guardians. You only need 2 because, honestly, because of some of the new cards, you don't really need more than 2, but it's really nice to just have these, like, you know, you do want to run maybe a 3rd one in the side deck, although I specifically don't think you need it. But it is a nice card to open up with if your your hand kind of sucks, or you able to draw into it later, because sometimes it's just able to give you the follow-up that you're not able to gain normally. And then for the last one, Super All-In. This one is essentially 3rd copy of this, but also better in some ways, but also some worse. Super All-In is very interesting. It's allowing you to return 1 Synchro monster you control into the X-Rig, and if you do, special summon a Flower Cardian monster from your graveyard. Which sometimes you want to do that anyway because you want to shuffle something back. However, you need to draw a card from the top of your deck, and it should be a Flower Cardian. If not, you get to pop your entire monsters, I guess, and send the card to the graveyard. It's really, really, really bad if you're not, and also, like, I believe half your life points. It's really, really bad if you don't have Flower Stacking, or you know that the top card in your deck is a Flower Cardian, so it's really, really risky. But if you're able to pull it off, and sometimes it's also just able to give you the win, essentially turn 1, because you're able to perform your FTK, which is really important because of this card. So it's really good. However, it's also, if it gets activated, you are able to add a spell or trap of any any spell and trap during the end phase, which is really nice. I do think it should have been immediately, but it's still very, very nice. The point is, it's a very, very nice card as a one-off. You can run Super Koi Koi. I just specifically think that Super Koi Koi is not that good, because I think this does a better job. And also, like, it's allowing you, like, if you're able to generate so much advantage, so it's like, if you're able to just like do flower stacking, which most of the time you are able to because you only run one copy of this, you are stacking your deck, you super all in, get a card, then just get bunch of draws with Willow, or just set your strategy as much as you want to, and then essentially just continue doing things again to Synchro Summon again, which is really, really good. Because if you Synchro Summon a lot, you're able to burn your opponent with cards like Synchronized Realm, which is the main point of the strategy. Also, we're running 3 copies of Desynchro because it is part of the Synchro package. Point is, Synchronized Realm is your main win condition. You have to use this card. You could run like maybe an Exodia Pieces or something with the Pharaoh. I think it's Wars of the Pharaoh, like a weird trap. Point is, this one I think is the most consistent and better way to burn your opponent for FTK them, because that's pretty much the main strategy of the deck. Otherwise, you're not really able to win. Point is, every time you're Synchro Summon, you burn your opponent for 500, and they stack. So if you have 3 of them, you burn your opponent for 1500. Most of the time, if you only have 1, you only need to Synchro Summon like about 10 to 13 times. If you have 2, you can do less. And most of the time, you are able to draw into them because you also have Zebragas to like shuffle your deck back, and you shuffle your deck multiple times. So you have a very, very high chance to seeing these. Not always in your opening hand, but you're still able to see these, and you are able to draw into them. Sometimes it sucks you're not able to draw into them, but they are supposed to be your main win condition. As for Desynchro, you just get cards like Synchros back into your extra deck, then get them back. Like specific one is supposed to be Moonflower, which is one of the most important ones. Then like you get the cards back into your side of the field, trigger their effects again, because they're soft ones per turns, and sometimes on summon. And then you just Synchro Summon again. It's really, really good. It's also helping you with Synchronized Realm, and I really, really like this package because it's just giving your deck quite a bit of power. And then for the last 4 cards, 1 Reinforce of the Army and 3 Allure of Darkness. These are the last 4 cards because your deck is, for a weird reason, Dark Warriors. But because of that, you can take advantage of these cards. I do think sometimes I don't want Allure and 3 additional Flower Cardian names, but sometimes they also get stuck in my hand, so Allure Darkness does help you get rid of cards like, an additional Pine you don't want, an additional Peony with Butterfly you don't want. It's really, really good, so having 3 Allure Darkness in your Reinforcement of the Army is a very, very nice thing for your strategy. But that's pretty much does it for the deck. Now we'll move on into the extra deck. So starting things off, we're going to start off with the Flower Cardian extra deck monsters, and that is 3 copies of Flower Cardian Moonflower Viewing, which is the most important one, 2 Borderfly, 3 Light Shower, which I will essentially just fix in a second, and then 2 Light Flare. These are the Flower Cardian extra deck monsters that you want to run. Some people might even say you can only run 1 of these, but I like a second one just in case. But in case of the Flower Cardian's extra deck monsters, these 6 are the most important one for the strategies. These 1 are just nice. Flower Cardian Light Flare does have a nice effect of like being a 5000 beater that also can negate spells and traps, so it's really nice. I wish it could also negate monster effects, because then maybe I could play around Nibiru. We do have another card in the extra that does allow you to do that, but Nibiru is the biggest issue for this archetype, because this archetype cannot really stand Nibiru. It can stand almost any other hand trap but Nibiru, and draw, but nobody really runs draw, so like Nibiru is the biggest issue. However, it's still a very, very nice beat stick, going second, and can negate spells and trap, which is really nice. And then when it dies, it does giving you one of these guys to summon. But like I said, it's not really that important. As for Boardfly, you're able to banish a Flower Cardian from the graveyard, and it's essentially Abyss Dweller on steroids. It's absolutely insane and just luck your opponent, and it's also giving your Flower Cardians piercing damage. Very good, these, like I said, going second, but these are the best ones going first. Light Shower is a very strong Flower Cardian. First off, it's essentially protect your Flower Cardians, kind of like giving you kind of like a Magic Spectre effect, which is a protection, I believe, from targeting and battle, which is absolutely ridiculous. Oh, sorry, not battle. From targeting and destruction by card effects, which is absolutely ridiculous. And also, during your opponent draw phase, it's burning him for 1500, which is absolutely ridiculous, because these stacks. So if you're able to summon 2 of this is 3000 points of damage, which is absolutely ridiculous. So sometimes I'm able to only summon 1, and then I just burn my opponent with Synchronized Realm until they reach 1500, and then just kill them. Or sometimes I'm able to make 2 and just burn them until they reach 3000, and they're in their draw phase, 3000 points of damage, you're dead. But how are you able to essentially accommodate for that deck so much? Well, this is the main card that help you essentially get into the strategy. Flower Cardian Moonflower Viewing. On summon, allowing you to skip your next draw phase, which you don't really care about, and it's a soft form spreader again. You get to draw a card. If it's a Flower Cardian monster, you get to special summon it. And it's a tuner. It can turn all of your monsters to level 2 when it's synchro summoned. It's a synchro tuner. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're using this to get another copy of this, and then to another copy of this, and then you continue drawing cards, use desynchro, and essentially like rotate these over and over until you're getting your opponent very, very much down and drawing your synchronized realms. Sometimes you even go into one of this just because you want to clear up your board and you don't really need a tuner, and then you go into these, and sometimes you go into these with your super all. And it's kind of like a weird strategy, but this one and this one are really, really important. It's honestly depending up to you what you want to do, but these are the most important ones, and then these to burn your opponent during the end. And that's pretty much does it for the Flower Cardians themselves. The rest of the extra can be whatever you want. I decided to go with these guys because they're just worked for me the best. Which Anima, you can make a pine immediately into it. Linkaribo, again, make a pine into it, but Anima just help you to steal monsters that your opponent kind of like doesn't think twice when you put it in front of extra monster zones. Cerberus and Phoenix, you're able to make very easily Link 2s sometimes before you lock yourself. So these are really nice. Like a Link 3 is really hard, but Link 2s are okay. And then you have Herald of the Arclight, because sometimes you are able to get 2 monsters. One of them is a tuner like Peony with Barrowfly, and then essentially just make Herald of the Arclight in the extra monster zone and essentially just stop your opponent from Nibiruing you. Although most of the time you want the extra monster zones and most of your zones for everything, but sometimes you do need to sacrifice these and essentially perform your FTK. But that's pretty much does it for the Flower Cardian strategy. A little bit of explanation over what I like to do, but this is a very, very complex deck. It's a very, very fun one, but it's very, very hard to explain because most of the cards are like, they do the same, but they're a little bit difficult. But that's pretty much it, and let us jump to the next deck choices. Alright, so for next week choice, we're actually going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to pull the other options from the Dragoonity list a little bit back just because next week is my worldwide birthday, so I actually want to make this a little bit different. Instead of just doing these 3 other options and then pulling another option, we're going to have 4 whole different options of decks that I'm still working on a little bit. I'm almost finished with all of them. But you're getting to choose one of these to come back a little bit earlier than I planned this week. Because the fact that it's my birthday and I want to share with you some very, very cool things. So for the 4 options, we have for A, Ancient Gears. For B, we have Vendrids. For C, we have Crusadia, not sure which variant of Crusadia. And for D, the returns of the Triple D, DDD. Pretty much, yeah. Either it's one of my favorite OTK decks, my absolute favorite archetype, one of my favorite archetype to just mess around with, which is Crusadia, and the deck that I'm apparently a pro at, comparing to a lot of people. So yeah, it's one of those 4 options, and I love every one of these decks very, very much. So you get to choose which one of these you want to see next, because yeah, next week is my actual worldwide birthday, so I think that's a little bit makes sense. But that's pretty much it for the video, and does it for the deck profile and everything. So yeah, hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like and subscribe as usual. Remember, creativity is the key in this game. Have a good year, because we start a new year today, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.